I'm a little bit late on the forecast this week due to some family emergencies. And because it's Wednesday and I usually release on Monday, what I want to do instead, I want to do a breakdown of the Capricorn Solstice, which is taking place on the 21st. I'm just going to read this chart for you guys. I think that it's a very potent time and it's good to understand what an event chart is and how it can impact you. And the solstice is a really powerful time of the year. So we're going to go into that. I'm Natha Perkins of Electra Astrology. I do a Path Ahead Astrology Forecast every Monday. Check that out. A reminder too that I have a Substack. I am doing more written form there. And, as a manifesting generator and a Mercury in Gemini, I love to present information in a lot of different ways. And I don't like to give you the exact same information over and over. So you can find me on Instagram, on Substack, on YouTube, and on my newsletter. It's all going to be a slightly different form of the information. So depending on how your brain works, you can check any or all of those out. Everything is under Electra Astrology, and you can also find me at electraastrology.com if you want to book a reading. So my schedule is really full right now, which is amazing. And also it means that it's a little bit harder to get in. But you can go ahead and book a reading and then you are on the books. Or you can always book a recorded reading, which means that you will get a reading faster. By the way, everybody that is getting energetic transmissions, which is my quarterly offering, you guys are going to start getting emails from me about your questions for this quarter. And I'm going to launch the energetic transmissions again, but not until probably January. So if that's something that you wanted to get in on, you can do that, but just not yet. So you'll hear about it. Anyway, let's jump into the Capricorn solstice chart. So the solstice takes place on December 21st. The timing will be different depending on where you are, but we are looking at the sun moving into the sign of Capricorn. An event chart is where we take the actual chart and we translate it and we say, what is this quarter going to bring us? How is the energy going to feel until the equinox, which we will have when the sun enters Aries? Because this is the Capricorn solstice, and this is about being, at least in the northern hemisphere, the shortest day of the year, where we have the most darkness and the least light. I want you to just take some breaths, close your eyes, and relax, and come into what is happening right here and right now. The mind is so busy, and there's a sense of wanting to complete. This is a 9-year, it's a completion year. It is also the year of the snake in Chinese astrology. And a snake goes into the darkness. It goes into its cave, and we must uncoil the snake. There's a lot that we don't understand about snakes, right? Most of us are terrified of them. This has been a very difficult year for a lot of us. And even if the difficulty isn't totally visible, it's more of a sense of getting clear on what must be left behind in order to enter into what is coming. And leaving things behind is hard. We get attached to our things. We get attached to our beliefs, even to our emotions. We create entire worlds that are built upon stories of what has happened to us. And then that becomes our identity. And so there is a lot of shedding of the skin that has been happening this year, but it hasn't been easy because we've had to look at some of the deeper experiences that we've had in our life. We've had to look at the stories and say, is this still true? So I've been looking a lot lately at loss. This started for me a few months ago. I just had a sad feeling, like I kept thinking this is the end of an era. It's the end of an era. And I was thinking about all of the people in my life that I have lost either through death or through just ending of a friendship or ending of a relationship. Even the children that have flown the coop, the way that the world feels different. There was a lot and still is a lot of grief around knowing that those lives, those multiple lives that I have lived, and you have lived multiple lives as well, they aren't coming back. They aren't the same. The relationships have changed and morphed, or they've gone away. That isn't a bad thing, but it can be sad to think about sometimes. because you might find yourself looking around and realizing, wow, I am alone, or I am the adult now. I am no longer in that relationship, and I have lost that person, or I have lost all of the friends that I shared in common with that person. Or there's the nostalgia of looking back over the good times and looking at when you were more fun. I always laugh and say when I was younger and funner, I would have loved to go to a concert that started at 11 p.m., but not now. When I was traveling a few months ago and I was sitting on a patio in Spain, I was alone and I was watching everybody drinking and having fun. I haven't had alcohol in 10 years, been sober for 10 years. And I was watching everybody have so much fun with their friends, laughing, ordering rounds of wine, and having a blast. And I was silent and alone and sober. And I was so happy to be all three of those things. I certainly wasn't watching everybody and having any sort of wish that I was with them, but I was looking at how different I am now than I used to be. That part of me that would sit on a patio and drink wine in Spain and laugh with my friends, which I did, by the way, that part of me is not here anymore. And now I find myself all these years later alone and enjoying it, and sober and enjoying it. These parts of us that we leave behind, these lives that we leave behind, the people that we leave behind. My dad died 2 years ago, and I just had another death in the family. And I'm finding myself wanting to pick up the phone and tell the stories. I want to call my dad and I want to tell him what happened. I want to ask questions, and it's not going to happen because those relationships are over now and they look very different. Now they exist in the spirit world. This is a year of completions. As I have worked with so many of you over the past few months, I know that you are also working with completions. Many of you that have questions about what to do and how should I proceed and how is this going to look? And the answers have been in limbo. We haven't had the answers necessarily, but the answers are starting to trickle in now. They may not be the answers that we wanted. They may not be the final and complete answers, but what is coming is beginning to show itself. And so one of the things that I want to talk about with this solstice chart is what is beginning to show itself. As we're watching all of these planets in Pisces right here, we still have Saturn at 25 Pisces. We still have Neptune at 25 Pisces. We've been dealing with this particular chunk of energy for what feels like weeks. Saturn has been paused. They've both been paused. Now, both are direct by the time we have the solstice. So that means that this heavy Piscean energy of fog, of not knowing, now we begin to start to know. But in order to start to know, we have to be aware of what we are completing. And the energy of Pisces says you must sit with what is happening. So as I have been sitting with the death in my family this weekend, I've noticed the parts of me that want to control, that feel like, should I have done something different? Should I have done something in a better way? Did I make a bad decision? I keep coming back to it is what it is. Everything happens the way that it's supposed to happen. Pay attention to what is in your field because it is teaching you. And so I will say the same thing to you who are listening. Everything is teaching you something right now. And that's actually true all the time, but especially right now. This is a heightened slice of spiritual teaching that we are in. If you take a look around your life and notice everything that is here, this sadness and grief of the things and the people that you have lost, the bittersweet nostalgia of times past that are no longer here, but also the relationships that are around you that need repair, or the challenge of meeting a difficult situation in a new way. The biggest challenge is of being present with what is happening, not trying to numb and escape, not trying to blame, not trying to ask a million questions and trying to solve a problem, but just being with exactly what is here, with the knowledge that exactly what is here is teaching you something very important for moving forward. Now, 2026 is the year of the horse. Think of the difference in energy between a snake and a horse. Very different. So if we liken the energy of the snake to this Piscean energy, with Pisces, we don't know what's going to happen. It is the existential fears. It is also the connection to God. It is where things are very foggy and confusing. It is where we have no power and no pull, and yet we can learn to just sit. So think about a snake. What's your initial reaction to a snake? You might be terrified. I've come across snakes in the garden, and they're little tiny garter snakes, and they are harmless, and they scare me to death. And yet, what I always want to do is stop and watch them and look at their scales and look at the way they flick their tongue and look at the way that they move their bodies. I mean, they're captivating. And that is what this Pisces energy has been asking of us all year. You don't have to face the fear and conquer it. You don't have to reach out and pick up the snake, but acknowledge the fear and then stop and examine the snake and see what's beautiful about it. You can tune into the energy of a snake, and it is very magical and mystical. And as these two planets are about to head into the sign of Aries, that's horse energy. Horse energy wants to go, it wants to run. So we know that we're poised on about to run. But this chart still shows us that we're paused. We will continue to be paused really until the sun moves into Aries, which is when we have the equinox. So the equinoxes and the solstices speak to when the sun moves into the cardinal signs. Cardinal signs are the action takers. They are the idea bringers. In the case of Capricorn, this is when we watch winter coming in the northern hemisphere. We have a 0-degree Capricorn sun, obviously, in this chart. The sun is who we are, and this is the darkest day of the year. This is when we go inward, when we go to introspect, try to get a sense of what we're doing, how we're feeling. What are we doing as we are in hibernation? The sun is very close to Mars in this chart. Mars in Capricorn is incredibly strong. It's exalted there. And Mars says, I will show you how to progress, but only if you've done your work. Well, what's the work? The work is in being with what is. The work is in seeing everything as a spiritual lesson of some sort. Understanding that there's nothing to push against. There's nothing to rail against. There's nothing to judge or quit or do anything about. There are no mistakes to be made, but control will not be had. And that is our South Node in Virgo. You cannot control it. You cannot micromanage it. There's nothing that you can do differently except be very aware of what is happening, of who is here, and of how you're responding. There is always an opportunity to respond in a more elevated way. You don't have to go down into a spiral. You don't have to go into the old story. I've been talking over the past few weeks about our stories, the stories we tell ourselves about what things mean. Usually they're wrong. Usually they're based on old trauma, old experiences, old history that isn't true anymore. There's still a challenge to dispute the stories. In this chart, we have Mercury in Sagittarius. We have Venus in Sagittarius. We have Juno in Sagittarius. Two of the relationship signs, Venus and Juno, are together, conjunct in Sag. Our relationships with people are up for a review. Do not allow yourself to stay mired in the same old, same old. I'm mad at that person and I'm going to stay mad. This isn't the time to say, they have hurt me in the past and I shall never let them close to me again. This is a time to change the narrative if possible. And Mercury in Sagittarius asks that you bring in your higher level wisdom. You do not get mired in the details of who said what, when, and how it went. The Piscean energy is asking you to become spiritual about it, see things from a bigger perspective. Most spiritual teachings have a baseline in non-attachment. non-judgment. So you can practice that. Now we see also in this chart that there's a Capricorn moon. It's in a conjunction with Vesta. Vesta is the temple and the moon is the emotions. Capricorn is the energy of having self-control. If you notice yourself becoming emotionally activated, and maybe your old habit is to yell at somebody or to assume the worst is going to happen based on past history, this is an indication that it is good to control your emotions. It is good to approach emotional reactivity through the lens of maturity and wisdom. And Vesta here reminds you to go into the temple of self. Go take a walk. Go take some deep breaths. Pray to you, whoever you pray to, for answers. Take responsibility for what you're doing here. Take responsibility for the changes that you wish to see. Approach all of these spiritual lessons from a place of maturity. That's how we pass the test. This does feel like a test at the end of the year, the end of a 9-year of completions, the end of Neptune in Pisces, the end of Saturn in Pisces, the end of Uranus in Taurus. Endings. There's endings everywhere, but what comes with an ending? A new beginning, a freshness. And we see Jupiter here in retrograde in the sign of Cancer. Jupiter is exalted in Cancer. Jupiter is asking us to get into our emotions. What does it feel like? Is it real? Jupiter says, is it true? Okay, you feel sad. So what? You feel mad. So what? You feel guilty. So what? Doesn't mean you have to stay there. Doesn't mean that's the whole story. So there's a lot of personal work. And I say work because it is work. This stuff isn't easy. We get very attached to how things used to be, and then we assume that we know how things are going to be, but none of that is going to hold any water, because once we get into this horse here and we start galloping, we're going to look back and we're going to be like, what? I don't even remember what happened back there. All I know is I'm charging forward, and that's what feels important. So as we're in that pause, that very pregnant pause, we are in the darkest night of the year. We are in the energy of endings, of things being different, of old things that have left that will not be back again, and new things that are on the horizon. The only thing to do is to just be right here. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. There's no one to be other than somebody who is willing to pause, tune in to the energy, and approach all of the lessons, all of the difficulties, all of the grief, the sadness, the confusion, approach it with maturity. What would somebody who could depend on themselves do? What decision would I make if I knew that I had my own best interest? What decision would I make if I knew that I was going to be taking care of myself? Both the sun and the moon in this chart are in Capricorn. That's the mother and father. That's the king and the queen. If you knew that you had a set of parents that you could completely depend on to take care of you, to keep you safe, to meet every single one of your needs in the best way possible, how would that feel in your nervous system? And if you are the parent, you are the mother, you are the father, you are the king, you are the queen, you can rely on yourself to know that you're going to meet every single need in the best way possible. You can relax, you can trust yourself. How does that feel in your nervous system? Take a deep breath and just tune into that. It changes things. And we know that even the best mother, father, king, queen in the whole world is never going to be perfect. They can never orchestrate a perfect experience for you, but they are still going to do their very best to take care of you. That's what you're going to do for yourself. All right, I'm going to leave you with that, and happy solstice.